Hi, I'm Elaine. Welcome to Top Tip Tuesday on my Stamp with Elaine Facebook page. These are the new Take Your Pick Crafter Tips tools. They're interchangeable and you can find it on page 145 and it's item number 10 and it's highlighted with this N against a pink square. It comes in a box like this and there are 3 tools in here. I would suggest that you keep them in the box that it originally came from. A word of caution: when you're taking the blades, they're very sharp, so make sure that on this rotary blade that perforates cardstock, that this knob is pushed right in, because that will contain the blade and prevent you from getting cut. So instead of having several tools, you can just have the one Take Your Pick tool and change the heads. The head unscrews from the top here, so you can keep the tool still, whether you're right or left-handed. Just unscrew it from the opposite hand and keep that one still. It's much easier that way. And then make sure that is pushed right against this round bit here to keep the blade in this housing, because if you don't, you could cut yourself. Then when you do want to use it, push that back, and then you need a metal ruler, and you only want to run this through once, because if you go back and forth it will actually cut the paper. So press that against your steel ruler and just run it through once, and you'll see it perforates the paper but doesn't actually cut it. Let's cut a bit off. Now I'm going to run it along the same line. So here I am running the blade through, and if I do it back and forth like this, it will actually cut the paper, and you don't want that. So only run this through the once, and remember to push this thing right in until you hear it click, because then the housing will engage and it will prevent the blade from accidentally cutting you. So if you only run it through once, it perforates the cardstock and doesn't cut right through it, but then you can use it and pull it apart like that. To remove it, just simply hold that tight and unscrew it with your opposite hand. Pop it back in the housing and then remove this tip, which is a craft knife tip. Again, screw it in. Keep your lid safe. Just to show you an example of how to use the craft knife is, say, supposing you want to cut a channel for a slider card. Okay, so it's 1/4 of an inch apart. Then all you have to do is just use that craft knife to cut in between, and it gives you a nice clean cut. Whereas if you use the scissors, you have to bend it back and cut this way. You get this ugly edge. It's not clean. Can you see the difference? That's sharp and more precise. So you can do that. When you put it back, make sure you put it so that the blade is on the flat like this. Okay, don't put it in like that. Make sure you put it in flat so it will slide into the lid properly. Unscrew it, hold one side still, unscrew it, put it back in the housing, make sure it's lying flat. Now we'll look at this one. This is a dual tip. So one end is a hook and the other end is a long thin pokey tool. Now this end is actually finer than the one on the spatula and piercing tool here. You can use this for piercing and it's much longer and thinner and finer. Say for instance you've die cut a flower and then you just want to add a little bit of detail, you can use this tool to make the little holes on it. Okay, that's just one example. You could do it on leaves, you could do it on a punch circle, a punch square, different shapes. If you don't have the dies, you can use that to create the same stitched effect all round. And with this end, you can use it to perhaps take out the really intricate dies that you can't get your other piercing thing to come through. This has got a much finer tip, so it will get through much easier. So those are the take your pick crafters tips. And another hint, when you're putting this back, make sure that these two are in the same direction. So for instance, when you put it back, you want to put that so that it's facing the same direction. You don't want one like this and one flat. Make sure that they're both flat so it can go back in the box. Okay, so that's my top tip for today on how the take your pick crafter tips work. Thanks for watching. Bye.